It is your Wednesday daily delivery. I'm Michael Rand. Glad to be back for another day. Hope you guys are all having a great day out there as well. Really good show coming up. Chip Scoggins from the Star Tribune joins me on a couple of subjects. Chip wrote about the Twins TV debacle ongoing, not on Comcast now, Xfinity for more than 2 months. No immediate relief in sight as the sides duke it out in court. This Comcast keeps the Twins off the air, off of Bally Sports North, taking that channel off the air in early May. Now it is early to mid-July. Not great for Twins fans. Chip vented his frustration in a column over the weekend. It is one of my not favorite subjects, but one of my most talked about subjects. So Chip and I got into that. Also got into an interesting ranking we saw of teams who've never won a championship. Who's the most likely pro team to win a championship that has not won a championship yet? A team at the top caught my eye. So Chip and I will get into that as well. I've got a football thought and a baseball thought at the end of the show. Twins rained out, so nothing really to see there. First, though, what I miss? Let's start with the Lynx, who won again without Napheesa Collier, without their best player. She is out dealing with this aggravation of plantar fasciitis. Don't know exactly how long she will be out. It's kind of like a mixed bag right now because they're not far away from their Olympic break. They're going to be off for, they're not going to have games for almost a month because of the Olympics, but they've got this big game coming up Sunday against the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark. They've got a couple more big ones before the break. And of course, Collier is supposed to play for Team USA in the Olympics. She's one of the best players in the league, one of the best players on the planet because she's one of the best players in the league. So I'm sure she is anxious to play in the Olympics, but I'm sure the Lynx are also anxious to have her healthy for the rest of the season. So I'll be interested to see how that kind of injury progress goes. But if she ends up missing the Olympics, it could be the kind of thing where she can get healthier quicker for the Lynx. We were wondering how this would impact the Lynx, of course, in the short term. So far, they seem to be handling this pretty well. Second straight win without Collier. Tuesday night in LA, a pretty convincing kind of paint-by-numbers win for the Lynx. They go 82-67 over LA. LA not a good team this season, but still a road win without your best player is always something that you are going to be happy about. Bridget Carleton, Kent Youngblood, who will join me, by the way, on Thursday's show to talk more WNBA, to talk more Lynx, to talk especially about the game against the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark coming up Sunday at Target Center. Bridget Carleton was tremendous again. 4 of 4 from three-point range, team high 16 points. I think 4 players scored in double figures as they kind of spread out the scoring wealth in the absence of Napheesa Collier. Carleton 4 for 4 on 3, 6 of 7 overall. The second time this year she's gone 4 of 4 from three-point range, both of those times in LA. Something about shooting at that arena must really appeal to her, although I watched the highlight reel from the game. A couple of those threes wide open. Good ball movement by the Lynx, but also good readiness by Carleton, catching and shooting, ready when the ball comes her way. But really just showing off the depth of the Lynx right now with the way they've been able to, at least in the short term, withstand this injury to Collier, right? You don't want this to be a long-term thing. If you're talking about how far the Lynx could eventually go in the playoffs this year, you got to have Napheesa Collier back. I don't think this is a team that's deep enough or talented enough at the top end to beat the best teams in the league consistently without Collier. But holding down the fort right now, being able to win these games without her, they're 16-6 right now. Best team in the Western Conference, third overall in the league behind the Liberty and the Suns. Beginning of the year, by the way, the betting line, the over-under win total for the Lynx was 16.5 at the beginning of the year. They've already got 16, not even at the Olympic break yet. 16 wins. Next win could come this week. Next win will put them over that number. So you can tell where they are relative to at least external expectations right now. And again, the last 2 games, doing it without the injured Napheesa Collier. Got to get her back at some point. Got to get her back for the stretch run. We will see how serious the injury is, whether it keeps her out of Olympic action or not. But for now, the Lynx showing off their depth, showing how good they are, even without Napheesa Collier. Like I said, Kent Youngblood and I will talk about that more on Thursday's show. But for now, a good win for the Lynx. Good to see that they can withstand, at least in the short term, the absence of their best player.
I'm Chris Hine, Timberwolves beat writer at the Star Tribune and the first 5-time guest in daily delivery history. Thank you for listening to this podcast. This work is made possible by our Star Tribune subscribers. For unlimited access to the articles mentioned in this podcast, our coverage of Minnesota sports from pros to preps, and even all of Rand's future blog posts about how the Timberwolves should trade for players they will never get, go to startribune.com/subscribe.
Let's bring in Star Tribune's columnist Chip Scoggins today to talk couple things. Chip, 2 completely different things. One, you took up the torch. A lot of us have picked up the torch and passed it around and gotten into this on the subject of the Twins, the TV situation with them not being available on Comcast, on Bally Sports North, going on more than 2 months now. This is not an update. I wish this was an update. This is more of a status quo being the same thing. And I have to imagine that when this started, they were hopeful that, you had this mid-June date at one point where there was hopefully going to be the time where they figured out the proceedings for the bankruptcy for Diamond Sports and stuff like that. Like, are they going to be able to go through with the RSNs, or is this all going to fall apart? That got pushed back to late July, so that's kind of now the target. But that's still 3 weeks from now. Like, it's going to be, by that point, unless something happens, Chip, it will have been pretty much 3 months, half the summer, and nothing. We don't even know if anything's going to happen at that point. Half the summer that people with Comcast couldn't get the Twins in a year where they're looking pretty good.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the genesis behind mine. It wasn't necessarily to give an update, but more to to have my turn to express frustration at it.
It's frustrating.
It sort of hit me as like, it has been all along, because it's. I don't know about you, but like in our house, it's like the Twins are on. Like, whether you're watching them, intently, whether we're grilling out and you just have the game on in the background, or whether you flip by and flip it through the channels. Hey, I'll watch the Twins for a couple of years. Just to not have that, you got to have that void. But also, it sort of hit me more like they were on that long West Coast trip, and it was 10 days, 9 games. And even when they're home, you're not watching on TV. But really, when they're out on the West Coast and they came back, and I'm in there, I'm like, I just feel so disconnected from this team right now. And it's a good team. It's a entertaining team. And, I think they're going to be a playoff team. And
at this
to just
point,
not have that opportunity. And you think about it, it's like, you got Miranda with this historic streak, and Royce Lewis, when he was healthy, was going crazy. And Carlos Correa is one of the best players in Major League Baseball. You have all these compelling
Brooks Lee now. Yeah.
Brooks Lee coming up. And so you have all these compelling storylines, and just not – and I'm going to say, yes, if you have Comcast, there is a chance for you to be able to watch it, but you got to go get Fubo or
do something else.
Switch to DirecTV. Well, initially – when this came down, when Comcast dropped them, my thing was, well, maybe I'll take that trial, that 7-day trial, but I don't really want to switch over and then have all of a sudden they'd be a resolution. And now, because it's one of those things, like a lot of people, we have our home internet tied with our cable. And so, and I kept the cable. I was, not one of the cord cutters, because I wanted to, for work related, wanted to be able to watch the Twins, Wolves, and Wild. And so, I just kind of been, initially I was just holding out hope that all these parties would come to their senses and get a resolution.
Right.
Well, that's clearly not happening.
No.
And so the next update, I think there will be an update, talking to Dave St. Peter. So all this was building inside. So that's why I said, I want to see if I can talk to Dave St. Peter just to kind of vent. If nothing else, I just want to vent, And I told him, like what I'm saying here, I was like, I just feel disconnected from this team that's that's compelling. And baseball's such a ritual part of summer. He's like, you're not alone. I hear it all the time. I'm sure he gets this a million times a day, but he was saying that the next kind of mile marker is July 29th.
Right.
The Bally Sports or Diamond Sports Group, their bankruptcy hearing. And so I think that what he called it a potential inflection point, like, okay, whatever's happening is happening. And then he's hopeful that there'll be a streaming option available to fans the last couple months. So we'll see.
Which we'll see. And it feels like the goalposts keep moving all the time, though,
Correct.
right? Like they move court dates back or something happens, like, well, wait till next year. Like last year, it was like, well, just give us some time. Streaming will be available in 24. It wasn't because they couldn't get the deal done to have streaming only available in 24.
Yeah.
They took the money. They took the most money they could get from Diamond Sports, kept the games on Bally, and now here we are. So, and at this point, blame is there's plenty of blame to go around. We'll just put it that way. Like, the fact that it got to this point, the market, the model's just kind of falling apart. So it kind of is what it is in that standpoint. The Twins probably, they could have done something different this year and ensured that all these games were on. It probably would have amounted to less money for them. So
it would have been, yes.
It's a business decision at a certain point, but they had to know, even if they didn't know this was going to happen with Comcast, they did know that this was fragile, right? They did know that this wasn't the thing that was going to be the most fan friendly, at least in the short term. So there's that. There's Diamond Sports just poorly run, and there's Comcast kind of pulling the rug. It's just everybody's got a hand in this.
Well, that's what I said. I'm not going to relitigate all the step by step. And Dave had St. Peter had the quote where he's like, when you don't have access in the year 2024, a big segment of your population, shame on the team, shame on the provider, and shame on the network or whoever. And that's what I told him. I said, I gotta be honest, I'm just frustrated with everybody. I'm frustrated with you guys. I'm frustrated with Bally's. I'm frustrated with Comcast. Like, this is absurd that you have so many people that don't have access. And again, yes, I know you can go out. You can, to say you don't have access doesn't mean that if you're willing to go pay extra for
get something different,
get something different. But if you're a Comcast and you want to stay on Comcast, you don't have access right now. And so it just seems so absurd and that it got to this point. And so I don't know, but Dave said the hope is, and their belief is starting in next season, that you need to have a streaming option and you need to have a cable satellite provider option. Like you can't just be one or the other. You need to have both. And so, whether that's MLB.com and someone, a local channel doing it, I don't know how all that works. It's smarter people than me, but they're pretty adamant that you need to have both a satellite cable and a direct to consumer option.
Well, they said that was coming in 2024, so I'll believe it when I see it at this point. But the biggest point you made, too, is the one that I've been hammering home. It's like, when you are out of sight, out of mind, that's dangerous. Because it's not just this year with Comcast, it's subsequent previous years with the YouTube, Hulu, direct, not DirecTV, Dish Network, Hulu, YouTube TV, all these other carriers that have had them and dropped them. And if people had them, they're like, now what do I do? Maybe I'll switch to this, maybe I'll switch to that. Maybe I just won't watch them at all. And they've lost audience along the way. Now, Comcast is the biggest one by far. This is the biggest, and it's a different audience. It's more of a core.
It's older. It's
older. It's more of your core Twins fans who are like, this is part of my summer. This is part of my ritual. And it might be an audience that's not just prone to snap up YouTube or Fubo TV for 3 months while this blows over, right? Like maybe they don't have a TV that does that. Maybe they don't know how to do it. Maybe they don't want to do it. For whatever reason, though, a lot of people are missing the Twins, and it's frustrating. It's completely frustrating, and it's I think you're calling the spot on. Yeah,
and he said it is bad for business because their attendance is down now. That can be a lot of factors. That can be weather. That can be, I know July starts, their attendance starts to pick up in July once school's out, completely out. It could be ticket giveaway stuff, those things. But anyone that thinks this situation with Comcast has not had an impact on their bottom lines in terms of attendance is, you're being naive. And Dave would even say that. He said, and he's right. It's like, it's really hurting their fan engagement.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
It just is. And so, and the people I feel bad for are, the people in the nursing home, retirement homes, where that's just a big part of what their day is. They watch the Twins, and you hear it a lot. And I gotten so many emails from that column of people that were like, this is a big, there's not a lot of activities they can just get out and do. They're not going to cut, not going to be cord cutters, and try to hire it to get a weird stream so they can get the games. That's just not feasible. And so I feel bad for people, that really, and it's probably affected, the people that live in greater Minnesota, that is just, they're not just going to hop in the car on a whim and go watch the Twins play, but it's part of their, their connection to the team to be able to watch them every day and say, hey, let's go watch them. And so, and the other thing is, like, I keep hammering home this point. It's like, Mike, this is a fun team to watch.
Yes.
Like,
that's
Miranda.
It.
That's the fun,
for a while, it was like, no great loss. Like, maybe this is a good year for them to not be on so much when they started 7-13 and they kept having these like 7-game losing streaks. But they're good now. They're good. This is a good team with a lot of interesting ideas. Like I wrote about them for Tuesday. I was like, think about a future infield of Royce Lewis at third base, Carlos Correa at short, Brooks Lee at second, and Jose Miranda at first. Like under team control or signed through like 2028. Like you can pencil that in if everybody's healthy for like 4.5 years. Like that's a really good lineup if everyone's healthy and hitting.
That's a team you want to go watch.
Yes, or watch on TV, which you can't.
Or watch on TV,
which you can't on Comcast right now.
That is a team you're going to tune into on a nightly basis just to see what these young guys are doing. So it's and I will say the Twins are responsible for whatever their part is, if you want to divvy up percentages. But I can tell you, talking to team employees and higher ups, they're very frustrated with everything right now. They know they need a resolution quick because this is an opportunity. They know this is a good team, and they're trying to sell tickets too. And there is a direct correlation between access and people feeling the emotional connection to go watch them play in person and spending their money.
We'll see what ends up happening. By the way, I want to go to the senior center or nursing home where someone is rigging up an illegal stream, whether it's like a tech savvy older person or like someone's grandson, granddaughter. I want to go to the place where they've got it rigged up to watch some like pirated thing through.
I could write that column.
I would love to write that. Yeah, we can write that for sure. Like, over at so-and-so place, they won't tell us how they're getting it, but they're getting the Twins game. So they can't, they're not at liberty.
The name of it.
Not at liberty to discuss. Yeah, in a secret place in
we'll blur
undisclosed suburb.
Right.
Blur out everybody's faces. I would love to write that story where they're just like, we don't have a problem. We're watching the Twins just fine. I don't know what anybody else's problem is. We got it here on our TV. Okay, the other thing I want to engage you on, something completely unrelated. My friend Anthony sent me this. Anthony Downs sent me this. Something from All Sports Culture. This is on Instagram. So like, this is, they're making up lists. Everybody is like, we're not hungry for content right now. We're starving for content. We're Tim Brewster right now. We're not hungry. We're starving. It's like mid-July. Nothing's happening right now, but I found this interesting. He sent me this thing, and it was ranking how likely franchises are to win their first ring, win their first championships. This is like, I'm looking at the list. I'm guessing this is what we typically think of as the 4 men's major pro franchises. And I'm sorry for Minnesota United fans, I'm sorry for Minnesota Lynx fans. The MLS and WNBA do not appear to be included in this ranking. So we're looking at like 36 teams, 36 franchises out of these 4 leagues, NBA, NHL, MLB, NFL, that haven't won a championship before. And obviously, hey, Minnesota's got 3 of those. By the way, Timberwolves, Wild, Vikings never won a championship. You might have heard that. You might have heard the Vikings have never won a Super Bowl. That's some people have talked about that from time to time.
Yeah.
But caught my eye, Chip, because of the 3 teams on here that are Minnesota teams. Spoiler alert, Timberwolves, number 1 in their rankings. We'll get to the other 2 teams in a minute. Number 1 in their rankings of teams most likely to win their first ring soon. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Before we get started, tell me who number 2 is.
Houston Texans.
Okay.
Kind of like that.
Yeah.
Houston Texans, Buffalo Bills, Cincinnati Bengals, Vancouver Canucks, Detroit Lions. So a lot of NFL teams
that are
there.
well,
teams that have been
also,
in the playoffs, kind of been on the cusp. Bengals have been to the Super Bowl recently,
and teams that are right there. Yeah,
Texans. Have a young quarterback.
I think they're whether they're Wolves are 1, 2, or 3, but they're obviously a hot team right now because of you're in the Final Four, right? Yeah. And you have one of the most dynamic young players in the NBA who's only going to get better. That makes a lot of sense to me. And if I was going to rank our 3 teams in this market, they clearly would be number 1, obviously, because of all those factors. And so, I think it just speaks to which. Think about the perception nationally of the Wolves in a span of 18 months.
Well, have they it's a lot of narrative to change, but have they changed the narrative now? Like,
yes,
it can still go back, but like right now, like it has changed a lot. Like the way people think about them locally and nationally is completely different than it was. 12 months ago. Remember last year, I was like, is it really a bad idea if Tim Connolly leaves for the Washington job? Like, they've been coming off that Gobert season. And it just wasn't good.
Well, how long ago would you say they were considered a laughingstock and a dysfunction and a team that would never win a championship because there was something goofy would happen? Now you think this team has smart leadership, it's smart construction. Anthony Edwards is going to be a superstar. He's already in that realm.
Yes.
So much of it too, I think, is Tim Connolly. I just think the what he has brought in terms of this track record and also professionalism in building a roster, you just feel like they're in good hands. Like he knows what he's doing. Now, whether it leads to a championship or not, we'll see. But they have a plan, and the plan makes sense right now. And so I think it is amazing how much differently you feel about them right now than a year ago.
I like that they're not afraid to think differently or be like a half step ahead, right? Like the Gobert trade, everyone's like, like how are you going to play 2 big guys together? You got Nas Reed. Like, what are you going to do? I did. I was like, I like the idea of the trade on paper. I was like, I don't care what they gave up. Like that didn't seem preposterous to me, except for the fact that now you can't do that trade again for somebody else. Like you've given up enough capital that you just by rules of the NBA, you can't make another trade like that. So you're kind of like, this was your big move.
This is your all in. Yeah.
They've made it work, in part because Chris Finch can make it work. He can take his identity as an offensive coach and say, well, actually, what we're really good at is defense. Let's be an average offensive team and try to get better, but let's build around defense. So he does that, and it's got some growing pains, but obviously bears fruit this last year. But then what he did in the draft a couple weeks ago with, 2031 pick, maybe that's going to come back to haunt them in 7 years. I don't care at this point.
Yeah.
But understanding your only chance to get better right now with this second apron and how the new CBA is affecting you. Like if you want to add some key rotation pieces right now, your best chance is through the draft because that's not you can still add those guys right now. So you go get Dillingham, you go get Terrence Shannon Jr., guys who could possibly be helpful next year, but certainly helpful 2 or 3 years from now when you have to let some of these other guys go. So the fact that he's thinking that way already, and now teams are probably like, that's kind of a smart idea. Maybe we should do that next year when the Timberwolves were the team that did it first.
Yeah, I think there'll be some copycat realizing because of these new rules with the CBA and the second apron, how punitive those are. Like, you know what? Get young talent and make your team better there and kind of mortgage the future a little bit if you have to. But I think I asked Conley the night of the draft, I said, because, you look at what their luxury tax bill by doing that Dillingham, I forgot who it was from ESPN, their cap guru.
Bobby Marks, like 84 million.
Like 50 million jump, right?
It wasn't that much of a jump, but it was a jump. It was like 28 million or something, but it was a big jump.
Yeah. I was like, It takes somebody signing off on you doing it. And
we don't know who that is exactly.
Yeah, we don't know who it was, but somebody said yes.
Someone's writing a check. Someone's writing a check.
And he said, and I love the quote, and this thing should be plastered all over town and at the front of every all pro sports organizations here. He said, we're at the big table. Don't get scared now. And it's like, I love that mindset. Like if you're a fan of any of these teams, that's all you can hope for.
Yeah.
Is now don't be crazy and reckless. No. But if you're making the smart decisions that are making your team better, and it's going to cost you money and it's going to be expensive, don't get scared now. And so that to me, like, I appreciate that about what the Wolves are doing. That even the Gobert trade, I applauded it when it happened because I was like, you know what? The old way was going nowhere. Like they've done that forever. At least they're trying something bold to try to be different. Now, when it started clunky, that's when I was, the armchair quarterback, and it's like, I don't know about this, but give them credit for having a vision and the guts to go do it. And so, there's a lot of good vibes about the Wolves right now. Yes. Obviously, the disappointment was the way it ended was disappointing. But as you step back and you look at it, you're like, you know what? They're in pretty good shape moving forward. Like this is set up to be sustainable.
It is. And Conley seemed like he was feeling it that night. He was he knew he had a good night. He looked like a guy who was like, just came off like, I don't know, like a great run at the tables or something. He was just like, he was amped up, and he barely slept, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And because the thing is, like, I watched a lot of college basketball, and I always say my two favorite players this year were Dalton Connect, the shooter from Tennessee, and then Rob Dillingham, because Dillingham is such a dynamic talent. He's so fast, explosive, creative, shot maker. I mean, he's obviously small, and they're going to have to figure that part out defensively. But, man, when you're talking about a guy who can just create, make his own offense, I think it was a great pickup for him. And to be, I say only in quotation marks because it's hard to even care about it right now, to give up something 7 years from now to get that guy, let someone else 7 years from now deal with
shoot your shot. Yeah, shoot your shot. Well, and like, when else are you going to get a top 10? Like, how else are you going to get a top 10 draft pick? How else are you going to take one more swing at adding someone great without having to give up someone from your current roster? Like,
or being bad. You're going to be bad to get to
And like, when else does a 19-year-old guard who's got all the talent in the world come into a situation where he doesn't have to be great right away?
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. You're not thinking you're getting a top 10 pick on a team that was in the Western Conference Finals, right?
No.
And so it's a great situation. And Mike Conley, to learn from him, I mean, he's such a pro's pro. I just think it's a good situation for Dillingham. And I like that night they came out and said, he's in our rotation. He's going to be a part
too.
So it's not like, well, we'll just kind of ease him in and see what's going to. No, he said he's going to be our point guard. He's going to be backup point guard, and he's going to play a lot.
And that's when you knew Conley was feeling it, because he does not talk like that usually. No. He was like, got a big seat at the table, going to roll the dice. This guy's playing. Is like, who put Tim Connolly up? Who is this Tim Connolly up here? I like this version of Connolly. Yeah, I like all the moves, but I like this version, the truth-telling, kind of confident, almost cocky version of Tim Connolly. We don't see that very often. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So Wolves number 1 on this list of 36. We got Lions at 6. I think we did the rest of them. Suns at 7. Not if they're playing the Wolves.
No.
Brewers, Clippers, Magic, Winnipeg Jets, not the New York Jets. That's a one anyway. That they wouldn't be on this list. Pelicans, Predators, Tampa Bay Rays, Minnesota Wild at 15. We haven't gotten to the Vikings yet, by the way. Wild at 15 on this list of 36.
So if we're just asking, who would you rank, Vikings or Wild? Which one would you go first?
Yeah.
To me, that is more about hockey, the randomness of hockey. And
I think so.
That there's a little bit more unpredictability with hockey, that you don't necessarily have to be the most talented team. We've seen, it's almost become cliche. Just get in and get a hot goalie. Right. I think it takes more than that. I think that's a little bit too.
But
there is a randomness. Yeah, there's a little bit more randomness to, and the short-term pain of Parise Suter buyouts are going to go away in a year, and that's going to coincide with this young group of prospects that people in the hockey world like. I'm not going to sit here
at various points they've been like number one in the prospect rankings.
Yeah, I won't sit here and pretend to be an expert on their farm system and compared to others, but I trust the people that are, and they rank it favorably with everyone else. And so, you're going to have a superstar in Kirill, and Kirill is 26? So
25, 26. He's going to need an extension pretty soon. That's going to eat up some of that cap, but yeah.
And I was just talking to Sarah McClellan, our beat writer, and it's like, and I wrote this right after the season. I had talked to Billy Guerin at the end of the year thing. It's like, because it's kind of a catch-22, Mike, because you're like, though the preseason buyers are so punitive, it's like 17% of the salary cap.
Yes, it's a lot of your cap.
Like that's a ton of dead money that you can't improve your roster on.
$15 million buys you a lot in hockey.
It's either one superstar or two really good players, right?
Yeah.
And if you have injuries, you just can't fill it. And so you don't ever want to make excuses, and you don't ever want to punt on a season because you can't waste years of Kirill's career in his prime, because at some point superstars have made a ton of money, right? And so what do they care about? They want to go to a place where they have a chance to win a cup. And you don't ever want him to get to that point where you go through all this hardship and this stuff, and then get to the end and be like, I don't see it. I need to go somewhere else. And so they need to show that this thing is going in a direction that's going towards a championship to keep him enthused about being here with this organization that's on the right track.
I agree. Well, I think I think the combination of seeing where this could be in a year or two, you got to kind of squint a little bit. You're like, Wallsted's got to be really good, and or Gustafson's got to rebound to kind of give him that number one goalie. You know what you got in Faber right now. He's excellent. They need some of this organizational depth needs to come up and not just be, third, fourth liners. They got to be impact guys. And we're starting to see that some. We'll see how much more they've got. I think you're writing about one of their better prospects, the guy they just drafted, the number 12 pick from Denver. I mean, he could be excellent in a couple of years, right?
That's the hope. Yeah, Zeev. I mean, you took them. They moved up at only one spot, but they moved up to get him. And Ogren, he got his feet wet last year. He played 4 games, and I think they're high on him. I think he's going to be a young guy that takes a roster spot. And I think what Billy Guerin's hoping is that some of these young guys start, might sound not exactly sympathetic, but starts taking jobs from older players and forcing guys off the roster. So you have a younger roster through talent. And so we'll see. I think I'm curious to see what this roster looks like 2 years from now and how ready it will be to make a leap. Because I think when you're giving up 17% of your salary cap in dead money, it's just going to be hard to be a legitimate contender, because if you have any kind of injuries, you can't really, you're filling it with young guys that you don't know. Right. And so, 2 years from now, let's see if this organization is really ready to take a big leap.
Vikings at 22, one spot below Atlanta, by the way. Atlanta 21, Atlanta Falcons 21, Kirk Cousins' new team. I feel like the Vikings and Wild are kind of on similar timelines right now, because the Vikings are kind of I think if you injected them with truth serum, they'd be like, we might not be that great this year. We want to find out what we've got in McCarthy. We got to deal with, they're dealing with $28 million in dead money from Cousins because they had to eat that. And so this is the kind of you're not going to bottom out, but if you're being honest, you're like, okay, 25 and beyond is when they think they could be really good. Yeah.
I think their ranking is totally reflective of the quarterback situation, just the unknown.
You don't know how good he's going to be. You
have no idea. I mean, a year from now, 2 years from now, that they could be a totally different thing based on what they see from quarterback. But this is it's such a big unknown and question. It's hard to really rank them any higher, because you're like, no, if McCarthy's the guy, they're going to be, if he's not,
got 3 years of possibility, because he's going to be cheap. And if he's good, they're going to be good, because they got everything. I shouldn't say they have everything. They have a lot of other pieces in place. They need more defense, but they got a lot of other pieces in place on offense.
Well, and they've cleaned up the salary cap situation to the degree that, next year they're going to have a lot of money at their disposal that they can go out and really sign some impact players. So it's the quarterback, and then also having that money that's going to come off, that salary cap space is going to come on. They can really bolster the lineup. So that one doesn't really surprise me too much where they're at.
No, it doesn't bother me. One other interesting name on this list, 34th out of 36 teams, the Utah Jazz, which has all those future mid-20s picks from the Timberwolves coming their way in the next 4 years.
A million picks coming their way, yeah.
A million late first-round picks coming their way. Good for them.
Yeah, I don't, if you're picking that late,
they're in purgatory. They got to figure out what they're going to do. They're just good enough to flirt with the 10 seed for a bunch of times. Like, was that where you want to be as a franchise? I don't think so. So that's
exactly. I know. It's like people keep falling in love with so much with draft picks, and you look at them and you're like, well, look where you're drafting, and like, not saying you can't hit in those areas, but the odds decrease, and so that would be a tough situation trying to figure out how to get out of the level that they're at right now.
Not all first round picks are created equal. I don't think that first round pick they're getting from the Wolves next year is going to be very high. I do think the 2031 pick that the Spurs does have the potential to bite the Wolves, and they have that pick swap in 2032. So 2030. I mean, so those could hurt them. Again, we don't care about that right now, but something that bears watching at the beginning of the next decade, and we'll see where this list looks like.
Me and you will be on a beach somewhere.
Not yet, but maybe one of these teams will have won a championship by that point. We'll see.
That's true. Yeah,
we'll see which one it is. Maybe all three will win. Maybe we'll become the new Boston. Chip Scoggins, appreciate it. Great stuff.
All right, brother.
Look forward to the rest of your stuff you got coming up, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you, bro.
Great stuff from Chip. I think one thing really stood out to me from that conversation is when we got going on the national narrative around the Timberwolves and how much that has changed in the last 12 to 18 months. Think back to, just where this franchise has been. And it's been a little while since they were a laughing stock, right? Like even before this past season, they'd made the playoffs 2 years in a row. Even though 2 years ago was kind of a disappointment in terms of how they finished in the regular season. The injury to Karl-Anthony Towns, not getting what you wanted out of Rudy Gobert in that first season. They didn't meet expectations, but they had still risen above a certain level. But they had not changed the narrative. It was still like, oh man, something's going to go wrong. These Timberwolves thought they were going to be good, and now they're not that good. Last year changed that. Last year started to change that. This coming year, I think, will change that even more. And you can see with this ranking, number one, again, it's completely arbitrary. Like, it's the middle of July. This is not a scientific poll, but even just someone saying this is the franchise without a championship that is most likely to break that drought next. That says to me that there's a public perception, a national perception changing. And it's as someone who's watched this team for decades, it is very fascinating to see this transformation take place in real time. Let us finish with the cooler. Couple quick things. Speaking of the dead zone of the sports calendar, I did happen to look up yesterday, actually today, looked up this morning, the ESPN, when I look at the ESPN app, the ESPN website, it kind of shows me future dates for Minnesota teams. Vikings against the Raiders. Preseason opener for the Vikings is exactly 1 month from today against Las Vegas. 3 p.m., August 10th. So there you go. 1 month till the preseason opener for the Vikings. If you are feeling sports starved, if you're feeling football starved, things aren't that far away, especially if you are a Vikings fan. Also, the Yankees. I didn't really notice this until reading up on them, but they are in a funk right now. Lost to Tampa Bay last night. GM Brian Cashman on the trip with them now. Not successful lately. 6-17 in their last 23 games. Now, it tells you how good they were to start the year, that they're still 55-38 even after a 6-17 slide. Tells you how good they had been. But yeah, in a major funk right now. So if you were feeling the need for a little schadenfreude, a little joy at the expense of others, Yankees 6-17 in their last 23 games after looking nearly invincible at the start of the season. That will do it for me today. Like I said, Kent Youngblood, tomorrow's show, talking Lynx, talking WNBA, talking Caitlin Clark, plenty of other stuff as well. Sounds like the Twins will have a doubleheader today. Until then, I am Michael Rand, back at it again tomorrow.